I hate this thing that controls me. I thought I was a machine before. No, I was a motherfucking goddess of compassion compared to what I've become.
Hello, everybody. My name is KirkpattieCake. I'm an author and robot, and that was a quote from Threadbare by LBRY, which, from the background, you can tell we're doing another book review today. But before we get started, this is just a reminder this is the last week for your LBRY submissions for June. If I said that last week, I was very confused. I've been confused all week because I thought this week would have one video in June and then one in May, but I'm apparently very confused. Let's get into this book. LBRY's Threadbare is the first of a 3-book series trilogy. I think that's what they're called. I should know, I'm a robot. Goodreads describes Threadbare as a sci-fi lesbian romance. The primary focus is on Vic Corin, a cybernetic soldier who is the best merc in fighting Storm. She is the strongest, fastest, smartest, most dexterous individual and is also impervious to pain. But all she wants is to feel human again. Then she meets Kelly, and all she wants is love. But can a machine feel love? After making an unethical, illegal decision, Kelly puts her freedom at risk, and to save her, Vic must convince the world that she is actually just a robot, her desire for humanity be damned. That's the basic premise of the book. What we got is something not quite that. Let's get into it. The novel starts off with Vic and her team of 4 out on a hostage recovery mission. Vic's a soldier, then you've got Lyle the driver, Alex the tech guy, and Kelly, her emotional support human. Her empath. They're infiltrating the home of this insanely sadistic couple who are out to dinner. Their target is to retrieve a child. Vic and her team must get the child back. Of course, things don't go quite as planned, and once Vic gets into the building, there's a tripwire which leads to a bomb, and she jumps out the window with Kid as the bomb goes off. Her driver's got a hover van, so he lifts off to catch her and the kid, bringing them inside before they fall to the ground. But by the time they land again, the sadistic couple called the Rodwells have arrived back at the apartment and spot Vic's team's vehicle. The couple comes toward the van, guns blazing, and Vic loses it because not only is her team getting attacked, but these guys are so freaking evil. Like, they did a Google search on these guys while they were waiting, and you guys, they are so evil. The Google search told them so. Not their dog files, a Google search. So Vic gets out of the van and shoots the wife of the Rodwell duo before she loses the ability to control herself from emotional overload and pretty much passes out on the ground. Pulled back into the van by her teammates, she tells everybody to forward the information to local law enforcement because somehow law enforcement can't do a basic Google search. Vic has a bad dream that her empath, Kelly, is laying in a coffin, and she apologizes for ruining both of them. Vic climbs in the coffin and they're buried together before she wakes up in her room back at the Merc Moon base. She sees a message on her answering machine that takes text messages for some reason, and it's from the great and powerful Oz, that is the man who runs the Fighting Storm Merc outfit. He goes by Oz. And there is this large Wizard of Oz motif that's in this book, but actually it's not in the second book at all, so I'm kind of confused as to why that is. It's not a continuing motif, and it's not even an important motif, but it's thrusted heavily upon in this book. Anyway, Vic reviews the message, and her boss is so disappointed in her. He kind of reprimands her for going above and beyond what her goal was, which was just to bring back the kid, because she killed somebody and then almost got everybody else killed because of her recklessness. This is the extent of the reprimand. She isn't punished, she isn't disciplined in any way. Her boss is just disappointed. But this is enough to send Vic into a suicidal spiral where she grabs a gun from her bedside table and tries to kill herself. Lucky enough, the safety is on when she pulls the trigger, so she doesn't die. Her empath comes running into the room after feeling the intense emotions physically, and when Vic won't talk to her, Kelly invites Vic to a local pub to chill, drink, and maybe loosen some lips up. When they get there, of course, 2 ladies hanging out at the bar are hit on by some random guy soldiers. Vic doesn't appreciate the comments and smashes a bottle into the soldier's head. They get into a fist fight, which results in more people getting involved in the fight, and one of them is subsequently stabbed in the neck by his friend, dying because initial flirt guy missed his target, who was Vic. However, the death throws Kelly, the empath, into an emotional puddle on the floor because empathy to the dead is crippling. Also, one of the guys from the opposite group that Vic was fighting, told her that the chip that's in her head is being sold out to other groups. Don't worry though, this plot tie never comes back in this whole book. The bar fight means people get arrested. Vic is taken to the moon-based jail where she is immediately visited by her empath who has somehow already recovered from the strong emotional puddle that crippled her on the floor. Then, Dr. Whitehouse, the man who is in charge of Vic's robotic project self, appears and bails her out of the moon-based jail. While leaving the jail, Kelly begs Dr. Whitehouse to give Vic more time off because she's not ready to go back into the field with her emotional state. They say something that triggers Vic to go, "Did you lie to me, Kelly?" I don't really remember what it was. It was just all of a sudden Vic was like pissed off. And Vic gets mad, feeling betrayed by some. As she runs out of the jail, she throws a little golden heart token into the trash. That token was a gift from Kelly to remind her that she is not just a Tin Man, but she has a golden heart. I still kind of am wondering why the Wizard of Oz motif. Again, it's not important to anything. After Vic rubs one out in the shower and smashes all the furniture in her living room, Kelly enters Vic's room without permission and forces her to talk about why she's mad. Vic refuses to talk to Kelly until Kelly tells her what she lied about. Kelly admits to blocking Vic's ability to love because at one point, 2 years ago, get ready for this, they fell in love. Dun dun dun! I know, it needed a half dab. They cry for a bit about the relationship they used to have, and then Vic decides that she doesn't want a relationship with Kelly whatsoever anymore because Kelly lied to her. Get out. Kelly leaves, but shortly thereafter, Vic wakes up after dreaming about a surgery she had after becoming a cyborg soldier, where she saved Kelly's life, and then she died again because of falling debris after an explosion in a plane terminal. Kelly begs Vic to let her unblock the emotions so they'll let the memories come back in, but Vic refuses because she doesn't want to love Kelly ever again. Then there's a time skip montage to pretend the time is passing with Vic and Kelly not talking to each other without actually having to write scenes with one that doesn't include the other, and then they're just given a brand new mission. Vic is emotionally exhausted from not releasing her emotions through Kelly's empathic abilities, and she's also looking mighty ragged. Kelly begs Vic to let the release happen because if she doesn't and she shows emotional weakness, the good old doctor will 100% continue the borging process so that she feels nothing at all. And Vic refuses. And now at this point, it's important to mention that everything above was interrupted by interjected flashbacks from Kelly's point of view that included the first time Kelly met Vic as an emotional wreck, including the first time Kelly met Vic as an emotional wreck, Kelly talking to Dr. Whitehouse about Vic's robot condition and the accident that caused her brain damage and turned her into a Borg, vacation at Kelly's family's house in Asheville, North Carolina, where the two proclaimed their love for each other and had sex before heading back to the airport, where terrorists set off a bomb and Vic died protecting Kelly, but surgery brought her back to life for a second time. And just FYI, the eco-terrorists mentioned that set off the bomb in that terminal, they're also never mentioned again. Following all of that, Vic and the team are called for a mission briefing. Still failing to maintain herself through her emotions, Vic faints. The boys on the team, Alex and Lyle, distract the doctor while Kelly helps Vic process her emotions at least briefly. They're then briefed on the mission. Oz, their boss, is being held captive at his home by Rodwell from the beginning of the book. Once the briefing is over, Vic flees to get away from Kelly, and even though she's not talking to Kelly, she collects her guns and gives them to Kelly so that she doesn't hurt herself before returning to solitude because she is not freaking talking to Kelly about this. All alone for a while, Vic is restless and horny and decides to check out a sex club on the moon base. Here, she runs into a female police officer that she met earlier during the bar fight. They flirt a little, kiss, but Vic's not actually interested. The officer then gives Vic back her necklace that she'd thrown away. Vic leaves the bar only to find that she'd been stalked by Kelly. Kelly, however, saw the scene with the officer, misinterpreted it, and is now hurt and won't talk to Vic. Suddenly, the team is then crash landing to the mission at Oz's house, with Team 2 flanking them but not crashing. And if you think that that is kind of a drastic shift, that's pretty much how it was in the book. It was jarring. They were mad at each other, Vic went back to her room alone crying, and then suddenly we're just crash landing on a planet. I don't know, it felt like the author kind of forgot where they were, or a bunch of chapters were just yanked out of the book. Vic takes control of the ship and lands it well enough, but then their ship is ruined anyway because it was a crash land. They all head to the base that is Oz's home. Team 2 infiltrates and immediately falls into a trap. They all knew it was a trap. As Vic tries to hack the computer, she fails and has to throw both herself and Kelly into a crater to avoid getting shot by the security system while she's taken over by her AI system. Kelly tries to bring Vic back by shaking her really hard until Vic's consciousness comes back to the front and overpowers the AI. The heart pendant shakes loose from Vic's backpack or fanny pack or whatever she's wearing, and Kelly realizes, oh, you weren't in love with the officer at the bar. And Vic says, yeah, we're going to talk about that later, but now's not time. Suddenly, Kelly knows the code to open the door. It's just a catchphrase that has to do with Wizard of Oz for some reason, but they don't do anything that makes her learn it. She just apparently knew it this whole time and let Team 2 die. Thanks, Kelly. Team 1, that is Vic's team, surveys the house while Kelly and Vic also mutter to each other about their relationship issues and discover that Vic wants to be with Kelly for real now again. As they stumble through the house, they realize that Vic is Oz's daughter because of family photos everywhere, yet Vic rues that she's not human the whole time. Eventually, they find Rodwell, but oh, it's a trap again, and humanoid robots with guns come out of nowhere and capture the crew and then place them in Vic's old childhood bedroom so that she can humble brag with the mountains and mountains of trophies and medals that she has. They find that Vic's dad is dying in the corner of that bedroom, and this is when Vic discovers that she was totally blocked from being able to feel any love for anyone of any kind because she can't even love her father, and she hates Kelly once again. Kelly, Alex, and Lyle discover more about Vic via talking with her almost incoherent father. Meanwhile, Vic's being raped in another room by Rodwell because he came in, collected her, and then walked out and then just decided that, okay, I'm gonna rape her now. During the scene, one of the robot soldiers that's in the room just decides to disobey Rodwell for no apparent reason and then gives Vic just the opening that she needs to bash Rodwell down and tie him up because she's not going to kill him. Eventually, the four are reunited. They discover that the robot humanoids running around were made of what used to be people, including Vic's ex-boyfriend who died in the accident that turned her into a cyborg. Then, Rodwell comes out of nowhere and shoots Vic's dad in the forehead. Vic chases Rodwell into a freezer and kills him. Then they collect security info to see who sold out Oz's location because it was so clearly an inside job done by a traitor. Vic has gone full robot now from the trauma of losing her father, that she's no emotions, robots in control. She can also now make robots just shut down by thinking about it. The four of them leave for the base and call for a recon to come and pick up what's left of the hideout. Returning to the moon base, Kelly is arrested for putting an emotional block in Vic's brain, while Vic is taken up to Dr. Whitehouse's secret lab. How you can trace a psychic or mental block in somebody's brain, I don't really know. It's never actually explained, but that's what Kelly goes on trial for. Since Vic is under the control of her AI, she just goes along with whatever Dr. Whitehouse wants, even though her AI doesn't like or trust Dr. Whitehouse at all. She's still just like, okay, whatever. Dr. Whitehouse shows Vic and her AI his secret lab where he's continuing his cyborg experiments, and that includes turning his own son, who died during Vic's brain damage situation, also into a cyborg. Then he shoves Vic into a test tube that is meant to change her full cyborg. How? I don't really know. Meanwhile, Kelly is on trial for her crimes against humanity. This goes on until suddenly Vic is released from a test tube because out of nowhere, Alex, her techie, just so happened to sneak into the doctor's lab and unlock the tube, and took control of the lab's with technology and hacking without anybody finding out. And then Lyle and Alex take her to the courtroom to testify about how she is a machine, so they cannot press charges against Kelly for acting unethically against a human. Vic is covered in her own urine, but somehow she's still going to try to convince everyone that she's not human. The judge, to his benefit, doesn't believe them. So Vic asks Kelly to state her kill code that responds to her robot parts. Dramatically, Kelly calls out the kill code. Dr. Whitehouse, who is there as a witness, calls another kill code for Vic to murder Kelly. Ultimately, Vic doesn't kill Kelly and then shuts down from the kill code which was stated as the proof that she is not human. Ultimately, Kelly is released, Dr. Whitehouse is arrested, and the two of them start to have sex in the closer, but Vic has too much PTSD from the rape scene, and that is the end. So now that you have the ins and the outs of the story, are you excited? Let's actually talk about the content of the story now. So plot and logic is the first area that I would like to comment on. Because of just how ridiculous the whole prompt for Vic's infamous accident is, I read it. I read it multiple times because it's brought up multiple times. And every single time I said, are you freaking serious? Every single time I was hoping that there would be new information involved that would justify it or make it make sense, because the whole situation did not make sense. And every single time the added information just made it worse. 3 cadets were in an airlock simulation exercise thing. They were given loaded guns when they weren't necessary for the exercise. They were going to be mentally taxed on things that are stressful, on things to freak them out. One specifically was claustrophobic, and this was part stress test to see how they would work under stress and if they could accomplish the goal under stress and as a team. But they were given loaded guns with live ammo that tear apart everything inside of your body once it gets inside your body. So of course, the airlock fails, and the claustrophobic kid panics, grabs his gun, and starts shooting the lock. His bullets kill the 2 men and then just do brain damage to Vic, and then that's what causes her to become a Borg. So the big question here is, why did they have live ammo in a training exercise? Why did they have live ammo in a training exercise that required them to test their mental limits that would make them uncomfortable, that would make them scared, that were meant to test their ability to cope with a stressful situation? Why would you give somebody a gun? And look, I can totally get on board if the doctor was supposed to be doing that on purpose or did that on purpose secretly because he wanted a certain outcome, but he did not. He shows remorse and like sadness because he lost his son. That was his son in there who was the claustrophobe. And he had his little nose down, and he didn't know that it was going to happen, is what's implied in that situation. So why was this the choice? Last big plot thing that I want to bring up is that in court, Kelly says that she is desperate to stay with Vic because of the emotional need of the job, but then she refuses to lie about Vic being a robot because she doesn't want to lie. So her need or desire to be moral is higher than her desire to take care of Vic. Is that really... It left me wondering, is it really hard for people to make their characters lie in order to get what they want? Because you'd think if sticking with your client was more important than being moral, you would just say what you'd have to get what you want. But Kelly can't, so maybe that's her fatal flaw. Okay, talking about the characters. I didn't like Vic. She was bitter and irritating, and there was too much internal dialogue giving context to every little thing that we didn't need context for when we should have been in the action scene. It dramatically slowed down scenes, and at times it felt like the author thought that the reader was too dumb or she was working for a word count because so much internal dialogue. Now, you guys can tell me if you prefer to have every little intention or context to be told to you, because I personally don't, and I like books that don't do that, but I'm noticing a lot more contemporary fill in all of the context. Also, Vic is a Mary Sue. Put another way, she is literally best at everything. The book says that she's the best at everything. She's better than her pilot. She's better than her tech guy. She's better than all of the soldiers. She's better than everybody, and she controls things with her mind. All of the consequences that she had were cosmetic. But what about the rape? I hear you saying it. We'll get to the rape section because I have some comments on that too. So Vic was the best fighter, which I can accept as a cyborg that she would be the best fighter. She's got some robotic skeletons going on, whatever. But she was the best before that. It's literally offered as the reason as to why they made her a robot in the first place. So then they go to her home in this book, and all over everything are medals and ribbons about how good she is at everything. Singing, dancing, acting, fighting, painting, you name it, she has an award for it. Vic is absolutely a power fantasy on top of the emotional porn that this book has to offer. Then there's Kelly. She's rude, codependent, controlling, and insecure. This would have actually been a great personality to explore in the context of this book, where Kelly absorbs the emotions of others and maybe loses track of herself, or maybe gets too attached to people to a point that it's unhealthy. She snaps at anyone who is labeled as bad because why not? The author says that she's justified in doing just that because that guy is an ass, so go ham on it. And then she fawns over Vic any chance that she gets in a way that it feels like it's coming from the author. Point being, there really aren't that many dimensions here, which is really sad because the opportunities in this book are rich, especially when Kelly blocks Vic's ability to love totally and entirely when they can't see each other anymore. Kelly really didn't struggle with the decision at all as it shows in the book, and she pretends that she doesn't see herself as Vic's caretaker and rulemaker, but she continuously makes decisions for Vic against Vic's will and then says, I'm doing this for your own good. I don't really feel bad, but I'll say that I do. It feels like the author wanted to focus so much on the romantic side of this relationship that she couldn't actually explore what made this character or her relationships with others toxic. As I'm reading book 2 right now, and I know, why am I reading book 2? To get a whole picture. Kelly comes off as even more controlling and toxic as she fears Vic not needing her anymore, and she doesn't want Vic to not need her. It's the same mentality of a feeder who wants to make their morbidly obese lover bedbound and need them, while the morbidly obese person attempts to lose weight to regain independence. That's not a healthy relationship to be in. Kelly is intrusive with her abilities to read emotions and probes specifically with her clients and others when they aren't telling her exactly what she wants to know, which is what they're thinking or what they're feeling. That is a way of forcing or coercing information, and she does this constantly, including with kind of emotionally blackmailing people so that they feel bad until they tell her what she wants to know. She doesn't take no for an answer. She storms into Vic's room when Vic wants to be alone, but locks Vic out when they're fighting. She has control in the relationship and the ability to manipulate people because of her emotional empath abilities. Yet none of these bad traits in Kelly are recognized or worked through. I think this book would have been a much more interesting story if Kelly was recognized for the weaknesses she had and she had to work through them. Even in book 2, her controlling nature is coming back, and I think it's worse, and it could have been a point of conflict between the two of them when she had been trying to get better. Do not be so invasive. Vic is over emotional and breaking down and insecure the whole time and doesn't change. Kelly is pushy and invasive and rude and doesn't change. Everyone else in this book really isn't worth talking about here. Personalities are inconsistent and done for convenience. The main characters get away with acting out of line because it's their story and they're never punished. Consider Kelly first being hired to work with Vic. She snaps at Dr. Whitehouse, her boss, within the first 3 months of them working, and she gets nothing for it. Following her outburst, showing that she's very emotionally connected to this project, the doctor asks her, "Hey, so I want to share all of this private information with you. You remember you signed that NDA, right?" And Kelly goes, are you just gonna tell me or what? So, screw that NDA, right? Yeah, let's make sure that our person doesn't remember that she owes us her secrecy and her, silence, right? This felt like a scenario that was created to allow the author to fawn over her own characters, which I get it. I love loving on my own characters too, but there are literally no stakes here. And with both of the main characters just doing whatever they want, there's no consequence, no risk. It's just a power and sex fantasy, really. So tropes I hate. Look, if you've been around this channel very often, I like to say there are no tropes that I hate, but typically I hate writing tropes. But there's always an example of how you can do a trope well. These are the ones that I absolutely hated in this book. Number 1, I've already covered how the main character was a Mary Sue, which I want to say I don't even hate the trope because you can do it well. But the MC is an asshole, no one cares, and the MC gets everything that she wants. I'm over it. But aside from that, the book also suffers from the allergic reaction trope. That is, the good guys are always seen as good, the bad guys are always sneering, immoral assholes with allergic reactions to being called out. It's extreme. It's bad writing. Even Dr. Whitehouse, who is supposed to be the big baddie of this Merc operation, where they kill people and they do experiments, he recoils when he's called out for lying by Kelly at the very beginning of the book when they first meet. Like, this stupid little college graduate goes, "Hey, you're a liar," and he goes, "No." He's not the witch from The Wizard of Oz, okay? The second trope that I hate that this book did was the all men are useless creeps or love interests. Because the romance in this book is between women, pretty much every male character in here turned into either useless or creep or a combination of the both. And creep is interchangeable with evil because Dr. Whitehouse is a little bit of both. Every chance this book got, it made men leer at the women characters. There was even a point after Vic got raped where she was on the middle of the mission, her team was in the middle of this mission, her shirt was ripped open, she was bleeding, her boobs were hanging out, and the males on her team were staring at her breasts because dudes can only look at boobies. Am I right? It's so one-dimensional, it's not even funny. And then there's this other part later on when Kelly gets arrested and she's sitting in a jail cell, and it's just the beginning of a new chapter, so they're reestablishing scene, and some random guy is walked in past the bars just to leer at her through the bars, and then you actually get to the lawyer coming in. Like, was that even necessary? There are literally random men inserted into this book just to make another creep in the story. You didn't need more. Then, of course, there's the bad guy monologue, which I don't really feel the need to explain, but of course he just went on and on and on to Vic for no apparent reason. She's a robot, she's a servant, she's inhuman with what he says, but he decides that he needs to tell her everything. Why? And then there's also the everyone in this book is always horny trope. I'm sure you guys have heard of it if you've been around here very long. The cyborg tinkerer did it. Then finally there's the inconsequential conflict, which I sort of mentioned above, and that is that the main characters never actually suffer. And then I hear you bringing up the rape again. Just shh. It's inconsequential. So they find out that the robots in the final scene with Oz are in fact fallen soldiers from the Merc operation. It turned into robots. They were feeling conflicted about killing them after they found out that they were humans, but then Vic assures Kelly, yeah, we don't need to worry about them because they just feel good being laid to rest. Now, you can make this work, but when every single action that your characters take is inconsequential and they can never do any wrong and they can never feel bad, and here you are alleviating them of doing something that might make them question how they're dealing with this situation, I'm sorry. There's no power in anything that they're doing because everything that they do is inconsequential. Aside from the obvious plot issues, one of the big things that really gets me out of a story is when the mechanics, the logic, the choices don't make any sense. So the world building in this book is not very there. Again, it's kind of a book that has a backdrop of sci-fi without actually dedicating time to developing a sensical universe in which to live. And so the mechanics of the empathy and the technology did not work, and here is how. First, if they are the most elite Merc operation in the galaxy, and they are mentioned as being the best, why would they send a soldier into live battle if she needed an emotional support human to deal with her emotional overload that can cause her to break down in the middle of a mission? The whole story with Vic is explained that she's 63% robot-minded and 37% human-minded and not considered human anymore, but she has far more emotion than pretty much anybody else in this novel, which is that Kelly is on trial for putting a mental block in Vic's head that stopped her from feeling love. This book explains that putting emotional blocks on minds of humans is considered unethical and illegal for psychics to do because it's a manipulation. The only way to save Kelly is to convince the court that Vic is actually a robot. But this whole plotline is undermined by the fact that you can actually put an emotional psychic block inside of Vic to begin with. Machines don't have emotions. Period. If she was not human, Kelly could not have put the block in at all. So using it as a justification of, well, she's a machine, so I actually stopped her from malfunctioning by using this emotional block doesn't work. If she was a machine, she would not have emotions, and that would have been a better way to argue for Kelly's freedom. It's just that there was never any emotional block. This person is just a robot. When I go over the choices made in the plotline and with the technology, this is one of the dumbest setups that I can say I've read in a long time. And I'm not trying to be mean, but none of it makes any sense. The whole setup of this book is an elite private Merc operation sends an emotionally unstable soldier who is on the brink of a debilitating breakdown at any given moment into battle with her emotional support human who is also on the brink of breakdowns because she is connected to every single emotional person within a certain radius, and she cannot use a gun. No one else in their 4-person troop is a soldier. They're all in danger because half of this outfit goes down, well, you just lost your tank and the dead weight was the dead weight, so who really cares with that one? The Merc group sending these people out is putting them all at risk. They're also not sending her out with any protection. They constantly say how valuable Vic is, but she's never guarded. She could just be stolen by somebody who comes along with like an EMP and disables her physical abilities because she's not being guarded. She's emotional. You could probably emotionally bomb her too, and that would take her down. But I still can't get over sending an emotionally vulnerable soldier into battle constantly when you know that they've got debilitating emotional circumstances. It doesn't make any sense. It makes sense if you're incompetent, but that's not what we're told this is. Getting away from that for a second though, Vic has emotional suppressors that are meant to help her obviously suppress her emotions, especially in tense or action scenes. Number one, psychologically, we know that you can damage parts of the brain that cause emotions. If 63% of her brain was replaced, why not have those parts actually dealing with emotions be gone? because that was the goal. Number 2, the emotion suppressor doesn't actually work because she's failing at emotions all of the time, feeling intense emotions the whole book. Number 3, I know it's explained somewhere that the emotions just get jarred until Vic can purge them. The company knows that this is a major flaw in their design if they were trying to create an emotionless super soldier. So how is it that she is out in the field when this flaw is so well documented that she takes an emotional support animal into battle with her? How does any of this make any sense? You would think that if this soldier was so emotionally unstable that she has a therapist on call and the Merc operation wants her to be emotionless, then Vic would be required to have her suppressor on at all times when she isn't around Kelly, her therapist. But that's not the case, as the suppressor doesn't do anything to stop Vic from trying to kill herself before the halfway point of the book. Also, there's a moment when the narration says, quote, the implants are angrier than they should be, end quote. I thought the whole point of the implants and the AI was to make Vic emotionless, but most of the time it actually seems like the implants have more personality than Vic does. At least VC1, which is what the AI's name is, isn't huddled in a ball sobbing or attempting suicide every time she speaks to somebody else. Additionally, Dr. Whitehouse talks about Vic as a killing machine at some point and often rages about the emotions and memories of humans getting in the way of being a good soldier. If his whole MO was to make a perfect emotionless robot soldier in a meat suit, then why was any free will left in Vic's head to begin with? Why does he allow her to have emotions rather than wiping them all, and why did he get her an empath to work on bringing her emotions out rather than doing something to suppress them further, including lobotomy? Because we know that we can do that now, but for some reason we can't do that like 100 years in the future, 200 years in the future, whenever this is set. If it's because he can't convince Kelly to let that happen, I got a couple of arguments for you. Number 1 is that Dr. Whitehouse brought Kelly on. He was already working with Vic on his robo project before she was brought into the situation. Number 2, Kelly acted unethically and illegally, and Dr. Whitehouse knew it, so he had all the cards in his hand over Kelly. Kelly was not in a position to be making demands, and so he could have done whatever he wanted with Vic, and he didn't. When your main character's problem is that they have so much emotion they can't control themselves and need a therapist at their side 24/7, you can't make the argument that I'm a robot if only I had a heart, which is directly made in the story with the Tin Man reference and the gold heart thing, and this is exactly what this book is about. You either have emotions or you don't. On the empath thing, more than once it's mentioned that Kelly can put up shields to block herself from connecting with people as a whole. It looks like it's usually an all or nothing sort of thing. There are multiple scenes when Kelly and Vic are out where Kelly's shields should go up because the emotions surrounding death are crippling to her. That fact alone should make it so that she can't go into the field with a merc whose job it is to kill people. But she does. Especially with the type of client that she has, you'd think she would need a little bit more control and awareness, but she doesn't have that. It doesn't make any sense. Ultimately, everything in this book that includes the magic and the technology is out of convenience, or it feels like it's out of convenience, and it's used in a way to make the characters all-powerful and only suffer when it's carefully curated for the emotional tone the author is going for, not what would tell a good or logical story. This book's pacing felt very off me, specifically because of the flashbacks in the first third, maybe half of the book, where it intersperses. We're stuck in like the opening action scene with the sadistic couple for like 20 chapters, maybe it's 15 to 18, because it keeps interspersing every other chapter with flashbacks that have nothing to do with what's currently happening, and so the pace is so slow and disruptive and jarring. There were weird situations though during the flashbacks where it tried to do cliffhangers at the end of the chapters, but it really didn't create tension because you knew that Vic was going to survive, because you've got current year and then 2 years ago and then current year and then 2 years ago, so I didn't really see the point in ending chapters on cliffhangers like that. And then a smaller note was I noticed that this author didn't like to do back and forth dialogue very much and often broke up every line of dialogue with internal monologue or exposition. sometimes even completely irrelevant information, like breaking up a tense conversation between Kelly and the evil Dr. Whitehouse to reflect on Kelly's home back in North Carolina. This massively slowed down just the reading pace, destroyed the tension, and it read very poorly. Now, this is what I can see in the story and would have been an alternate story option that would have captured what the Goodreads page in the description tell me this book is about, okay? What would have made more sense would have been if Kelly had been brought to the ship to basically be an emotional purger or a therapist, obviously, for regular human mercs, because they obviously need it for the type of work that they do. Well, over time, Kelly would notice that she never talked to Vic, but she's seen Vic kind of hanging around, maybe as friends with clients of hers, and so then she takes the go-ahead to go and sit down with Vic and talk to Vic and be like, hey, I've never seen you around before. And with interacting with Vic, Kelly slowly starts bringing out the emotions in Vic, and Vic starts learning that she used to be human, or she has these human feelings, and she has these weird memories of things, but she knows that she's a robot, and she's only always ever worked for this merc organization. Well, over time, she could come to realize that she was a human, that she had her past removed, and Kelly is the thing that's bringing it out. And in which case, as Kelly awakens the human inside of Vic and has to help Vic acclimate to becoming human again, they also have to hide the fact that Vic is awakening as a human from Dr. Whitehouse, who would take Vic back to the table to erase her mind and get her back on track to be the robotic super soldier she's supposed to be. So that gives them both motive to be doing what they're doing, and to have Vic be confused about whether she's a robot or a human, because she's fighting with what she is supposed to be and what she wants to be, or what she feels happening, and the and all of the emotions and memories that come with her being basically kidnapped from her life as a human after an accident that she can't remember. So that would have tied in everything that LBRY was going for, while making it make more sense. Currently, it feels like it's just a mess of a mix of things for convenience. Vic is incapacitated when it's convenient, she's considered important when it's convenient, she's obviously a liability, but she's still thrown into live, high-risk situations that put everybody's life at risk. Someone as emotionally unstable as Vic would not be out on the field like she is. She literally has an emotional support animal with her all the time on dangerous missions because she is so emotionally unstable and unpredictable. Now, the moment you all been waiting for, the rape scene. It takes place between the bad guy Rodwell and Vic, and it felt so unnecessary to the drama, the plot, and the character action that it came off actually as disrespectful. It's randomly thrown in there, and I know that this guy is a sadist. He's called the worst sadist. We don't get any examples of this. We're just told that he's a sadist all the way at the beginning, like the worst kind, and then Vic is like, I need to kill him, he's terrible. But then this is just thrown in there near the end. It's interrupted by a nonsensical, one of my robot soldiers just randomly goes rogue and shoots Rodwell during this ordeal so that Vic can get the upper hand after being victimized. Let's just add this on top of her other PTSD, because she also needs this to deal with. It doesn't push the character, it doesn't change the story, it doesn't add any extra drama, she doesn't suffer from it for the next, 15 pages. For the whole rest of the book, it doesn't come up until she's about to have sex in the final chapter, and she's like, I can't do this. And then it holds it over in the book 2, where it's 10 months later. Whereas this whole thing, none of it reflected on her in the current book after it happens. She's more traumatized by the loss of her father, and that throws her into the becoming full robot, or relying more on her robot half, than the rape scene. Now, the rape could have been made more important, and it could have had a difference on Vic as a person, and I don't know if this is a taboo for this kind of person, but like, you already threw this rape in here, and it was supposed to obviously do something. So if you wanted to use the rape to make it actually effective as a change on character, if we go back to the suggestion I made for where this story could have gone, if you had this character awakening to her humanity by having that rape affect her in a human manner, when she is not ready for those kinds of emotions, and then she retreats back to being a robot, the situation would have forced her to feel helpless, and her own humanity and her own weakness, that she could not fight this person off, and she was not prepared for these emotions. It would give her a reason to go back, first to be too weak to fight off Rodwell, and then to disappear back into her robotic senses that could have then taken control of the robot standing right there, using her mind as the robot mind power can do, whatever. And it would have made a more cohesive line between all of these elements that converge together there at the end. But Vic never showed weakness. Vic was never worse at something than anybody else in the book. She was the best pilot, the best hacker, the best soldier, the best fighter, the best at everything. And so this situation could not have actually traumatized her. It is now used as a weak attempt to have sexual frustration and relationship turmoil in book 2. My final comment is, doesn't anybody ever get tired of writing or reading completely perfect, infallible characters who only fail when it's convenient and attractive? Or is that just me? If you look at me, I'm more emotionally detached and robotic than the chick in this book who only has 37% of a human brain. But maybe that's because I have a 100% robotic mind. But I digress. I'm human with you is the last line I will close on. That is my review of LBRY's book Threadbare, the first book in the Stormfront series. Have you read it? Are you going to read it? Love to know your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you'd have a book that you'd like me to take a look at, whether it's good, whether it's bad, also drop me a line. I'll get to it probably eventually. Maybe. We've all got that backlog, huh? But until next time, thank you so much for being here. Please remember to smash that like if you enjoy this sort of content. Share, maybe subscribe for more. I'm constantly doing things. Have a good week, and don't die.
The only people who should come are those who want to meet their monsters.
If this is what Agatha wants, I don't know how we can even dispute it.
Show me your teeth.
I change lives, baby.
And I end them. Sweetheart, no bargains hold. Only fools know restraint.
Only losers lose!
If your scissors are dull, may I recommend sharpening them with leather?
I think I hit you.
Mima says I must have a guardian angel.
To enter the ring but abstain from playing is suicidal. Your virtue makes you nothing but a liability.
You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die.